and welcome to PTV World Special. I'm FARRUKH PITAFI. Today we are going to talk about Pakistan's economy. You must have seen the way Pakistani media keeps on speculating about economy. And every day we keep on hearing something in further scandalous tones. Of course, there are concerns which are important, like our forex reserves keep on shrinking. We had to actually resume the IMF program, but so far the team hasn't come. But finally, we have heard from the government ministers that Pakistan is going to comply with all these requirements of IMF, and then, of course, the economy is going to improve. Today, we are going to actually talk about strategy, what exactly can be expected in coming days. There is one concern regarding economy's fundamentals, and then the impact on the people as well, particularly that even at this moment, while we keep on hearing different inflation numbers from the government authorities, the pundits in the market keep on saying that we are touching somewhere around, we have crossed 30% and we are touching 35%. What exactly happens when Pakistan tries to actually comply with the IMF? Is there not a concern that it will further increase inflation in the country at a time when economy is already reeling under the burden of flood effects and the circumstances that are there, the possibility of a global recession as well? Today we are going to talk about all these matters, and we are joined by an eminent panel who is going to help us understand what exactly to expect in coming days. In order to do that, in this studio, I'm joined by Sultan Ali Haider Saab, who is a strategy consultant, has spent 16 years in corporate sector, consulting with various banks, and today he's here to help us understand these matters. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. On Skype, we are joined by Dr. Hakan Najib, who is an eminent economist of renown. I consider him my lodestar. So, with your permission, Sultan Sahab, I'm going to start with Dr. Hakan Najib. Dr. Hakan, what is your take on economy at this moment? And do you think that there are early signs of recovery or some kind of improvement, or we have to still endure a lot before the economy's shape is right?
So, Tafi Saab, as always, good introduction. Yes, major source of concern comes from the fact that we have $4.6 billion in our kitty, which is the state bank reserves. The reserves have fallen continuously over the last 12 months. That should be a cause of concern for any policymaker. The global conditions remain challenging with the world, into a supply chain crisis, inflation, and now a global slowdown. In Pakistan, of course, the challenge has been exaggerated by the political instability in the country, and then the delay in decision making, which started sometime in February, March, when the whole crisis of the VONC started, and went on with the delay in the IMF, and the IMF got delayed till April 29th. But that's the past. Today, even the IMF, which was supposed to be doing the ninth review with us starting early November, and on 20th of January, we are still hoping. We've made a request to them, so that's the early sign of some good news. Last night, after the PM chaired a long meeting, the authorities presented a plan, and we can talk what are the contours of that plan. We have requested them that they may field a mission to complete the ninth review, as we are going to be compliant with the reforms that IMF feels are necessary, and I personally think are things that we should do on our own, even the fund asks us or not asks us.
Right.
But right now, all roads, just last sentence, all roads lead to only one place, and that is the IMF. Um, as soon as we get IMF on board, we can overcome the short-term dollar liquidity crunch, which is, which is slowing the economy, impeding our imports, which are necessary for the exports, and that's where we
Right.
stand.
Absolutely, sir. And as we come back to you, I'm going to actually ask you about the contours as well, because you, last time Pakistan completed its IMF program, you were responsible to steer it in that direction. So I'm going to come back to you, sir. But before that, let me bring Sultan Ali Haider Saab in the program. Sultan Saab, your take. I noticed that you have come with a lot of notes, a lot of numbers. So do you plan to intimidate me with them?
No, I have. Thank you first of all for inviting
you.
me. I have no intention of doing that.
Yeah.
I just wanted so that I have the number in case some economist bring in some numbers, so
Yeah.
I can refer to my numbers. Anyway,
No
my take, I'm not going to get into the pure economic analyst side of it, but I'll give my perspective as a strategy guy. And in my opinion, the bottom line is that it's more of a sentiment issue which is driving the whole problem. And sentiment issue is related to the foreign exchange price.
Okay.
Because root of the problem is that if rupee depreciates, with
Yeah.
every rupee decline against dollar, our debt repayment increases, our total debt increases, which increases the fiscal deficit, which increases the current account deficit. And that whole episode happens due to sentiments. Now, if you look at the fundamentals, as the gentleman was talking about, our fundamentals are not extremely bad if you look at in terms of the ratios, our debt to GDP ratio or other ratios.
Right.
But the way sentiments have been going on, the reserves have...
Hang on.
Yeah.
You don't think that economy is slowing down? You
No, no.
don't think that factories are shutting up? You don't think that inflation is really hitting the common man hard?
No, on the contrary, what I feel is that certain symptoms appeared, and the way the whole market started to react, that caused a crisis which has led to this.
Okay, because our market is speculators market, is it true?
Yes, that is true. Market is a speculators market, and since the sentiment moved that way,
Yeah,
now
but
the dollar started. The
you're
dollar
arguing for a feel-good factor, right?
Of course,
if I
of
can
course, of
understand.
course, of course.
So
big
how are
time.
you going to convey this market sentiment to IMF?
You see, with IMF, the problems are not in terms of just the sentiment. With IMF, there are other problems. So IMF is a good problem to have in a sense also.
Okay.
Because IMF talks about the discipline that we should be following, right? So IMF says you share a plan with IMF. We call them conditionalities.
Yeah.
But you say, I will do A, B, C, D, E.
Right.
Now IMF expects that it has your word and you will follow through on that. Now IMF doesn't give you a lot of money. But once IMF gives you a stamp of approval, you show that certificate to everybody else. And they say, okay, so you have a plan. It's a credible plan.
No, that is a given, right?
You're
I
right.
understand.
Just like the Saudis have said
but
so recently.
that bit was kind of understood.
Yeah,
but somehow IMF team hasn't arrived for the ninth review.
Yeah.
Why is it not here?
So the issue there is that IMF believes, and it has been saying for a long time, not just in Pakistan, but it follows their philosophy that it should be a free float to the exchange rate. Now the issue which has been following is, I mean, it's a bit of a controversial issue, that we only have the finance minister, current finance minister in Pakistan, who is cheering for the rupee, right? And he's positive and he's bullish and he's saying that the rupee is undervalued and it should be valued better.
Yeah.
For political and other reasons, there are so many other people who are detractors. You don't find it in other economies.
No, I understand that.
You're
but,
right.
but how does it impact IMF's judgment whether to go ahead with
No,
any?
okay. IMF's judgment is impacted. First of all, I do believe, based on things that I have read, that it's not just the free float thing. There are other conditionalities or agreements that we're not following through on, right?
Subsidies, for instance.
Subsidies, for instance. So, so basically, we do not have the money that we are spending. So we already have a gap.
Yeah.
And then we are planning to spend more and more on that. But the gap again is getting created by this crisis, right? So
that might be there, but
Yeah,
still, you
yeah.
agree in principle that we have to go back to IMF,
No, no,
right?
no. Of course, we have to go
And
back.
to do that, we'll
Yeah,
have to actually meet the conditionalities.
yeah,
Let me go back to Dr. Hakan Najib.
yeah.
Dr. Saab, what are the contours of government's proposed answer to IMF's expectations?
So the proposed contours here are that we will adhere with what OGRA has suggested as price change for the gas sector. We will try and protect the lower spenders. What that means is that people who use, one stove to cook, or a little bit of heating in small rooms. So we will protect them and yet make the required changes so that the circular debt flow, which means the flow addition to the stock, slows down or comes near zero. So that's
You're
number one.
talking about circular debt in gas sector or in petroleum or power sector?
Pitafi bhai, correct, in gas sector, which is now
Yeah,
nearly 1600 billion rupees.
yeah.
Secondly, again, the pricing of electricity, which is itself adding to the 2500 billion rupees of circular debt. So the tariff adjustment required is somewhere between 3 to 7.5 rupees. So the government would probably want to stagger part of it and pass on part of it. This still remains open in a discussion with the fund how we can proceed. Number three, of course, is the fiscal side. So on the fiscal side, I think some room has been created because of the floods. So we will get what we call an adjuster. An adjuster means that the flood spending will not be counted towards the 4.9% budget deficit that we've agreed with the fund. But even to reach the 4.9%, we have to collect 7,400 billion rupees in taxes this year, the FBR money. That seems to be on the short side. We've due to several reasons, we've had a shortfall of about 200 billion in the first 6 months. So the fund's asking anywhere between 170 to 400 billion rupees of new taxation. And some areas are very obvious on that. I mean, again, the government rightly is thinking, try to not levy the tax on, the salaried class. So, for example, the commercial banks have had a bonanza on the exchange rate monies that they made. So you may see something on the commercial banks, a bit of flood levy, maybe some sales tax changes, maybe some withholding tax changes, something on the imports. So this kind of a mixed bag, which does not impact the people directly. And
Right.
lastly is what you guys were talking earlier, which is the exchange rate market. Patavi sir, uh, I, so I talk about the exchange rate in a very careful manner.
Yeah.
And here's my take. There are two rates, let's say. One is the market determined exchange rate, which is floating anywhere between 240 to 265, which is the open market,
Right.
depending on that, you buy with the identity card and the thumb impression or you don't, and a kind of a black market has started work. And then there is the other rate, which is somewhere near 229, which is our interbank rate. I think both rates are in need of what I call coming to the right place. And
Right.
why do I say?
Reconciliation between the two rates.
Yes, exactly. Because even
Yeah.
the open market rate is driven by what you guys were talking about, by the sentiment. What is that sentiment? Everyone calls me, whether I'm in Pakistan or I'm working in Paris. They give me a call and ask me, and this is the most of the calls that come to me are, should we be buying dollars? So you can imagine that there is hoarding of dollars, there is savings of money in dollars, there is speculation in dollars, and then there is the Afghan trade. So the
Right.
260 rate is also not a rightly representative market equilibrium rate. It is a rate driven by the fear of Pakistan being in a difficulty. Now
Right.
let's come to other rate, which is our
Yeah.
230, 229, 230 interbank rate. Again, that has to take care of three things, and I leave it on that. One, the fundamentals, which are weak. Our macro fundamentals are weak. Foreign exchange reserves, inflation, our growth, our agriculture hit by floods. So our macro numbers are weak. Number two, you must remember the supply of incoming dollars is weak because your imports are on the higher side and your exports and remittances are not matching that figure.
Right.
And number three, of course, is the sentiment. So some kind of overall reconciliation has to come through where we come to some equilibrium, which actually represents an improvement in
Right.
fundamentals along with the IMF.
Absolutely, Dr. Saab. Let me very quickly ask you another question regarding IMF's attitude. I understand that Pakistan has in principle committed to these reforms, and this is something that we have been consistently failing in the previous programs as well. But eventually we think that we'll be able to pull that off. But when COVID happened, at that time it seemed that IMF was most considerate. This time floods have destroyed the economy, and yet we don't see the similar kind of flexibility. It seems that IMF wants things to go up, prices to go up, and that is not a bother. They just want, Pakistan to comply with whatever we had said. Why is it that this time they are not that flexible?
You'd remember during the COVID time, you brightly pointed out, they gave us what they called a rapid financing instrument that the fund has, and they
Yeah,
gave us
SDR.
$1.4 billion unconditionally to Pakistan. So one, those were very tough times, and there was a general consensus to help the emerging markets whose debts were higher. So Pakistan got that help. Now there are two issues. One is that I think there is a trust gap between the fund and Pakistan. And I say that after talking to both the sides. I feel there is a certain trust gap. We've kind of not adhered to some of the things we've discussed with them. And two, IMF's own reputation is also online. They have to make sure once you sign with the IMF, it's their responsibility partly to make sure that your financing needs are fulfilled. So they have to make sure that you're on a track where your financing needs are completely fulfilled. On the flood side, I think this is now that we've made a very strong case in Geneva and follow on. Earlier we had figures which were floating around where we couldn't put a number. Now I think fund would give you an adjuster that would be part of the deal. So it's
Right.
let's build all these things to move forward with them.
Right, sir. Sultan Saab,
Yeah.
you were earlier talking about market sentiment.
Yeah.
And of course, then you agreed with me that our market is speculator's market.
Yeah.
I understand that if nobody like me would go and try to speculate, or if I run a small company. But remember Miftah Saab's tenure, in which he revealed that our banks to whom you have been advising in the past,
Yeah.
they have been also busy in speculating. Why is it that our formal sector, our banking sector, will actually stoop to this level as well?
You see, if there's an opportunity, as has just been revealed, that the difference between open market rate
Yeah.
and the interbank rate is too much, right? So it is then anybody's call and anybody's bid. But to me, I would.
No,
I
let
would
me
want,
qualify.
yeah,
Sorry
yeah,
to cut
please,
you. Let me
please,
qualify
please,
what
please.
what goes on.
Yeah.
You know, there are certain anchors who are very much invested in the economy, right? You
Yeah,
understand
yeah,
them.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't want
yeah,
to name them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But one day they predict something positive about economy, and the market goes up. I'm talking about stock market, right? Or the sentiment goes up.
Yeah.
The next day they say something negative and everything starts crashing. They
Yeah.
have that kind of impact.
Yeah.
But there is no control to see whether they have some kind of conflict of interest, because they might be investors as well. Now these channels are also owned by companies, and those companies are also investors. And then some of them are even investors in banks.
Yeah.
And yet it seems that everybody in creating this kind of sentiment or this kind of environment, they keep on cashing in. So right now, why is it that all our business sector, all sectors of the economy,
Yeah.
why are they actually trying to do that to their own people, their own market?
No, it's about panic. One thing, let me just clarify in terms of banks. So it is bid and ask rate, right?
Yeah.
The rate at which banks would buy and the rate at which banks would sell. So the excess money that they have made is the spread between them was increased, but they were not too much. I mean, you cannot blame banks too much in terms of driving directionally.
I'm not blaming them.
No, no,
Standing committee
no.
on the of the parliament was.
No, you see, but that is one factor. In my opinion, you see, if you talk about, then it's a Forex Traders Association. So one thing which hasn't been really highlighted recently, there was this press conference done, and it was a very courageous press conference by Malik Bostan, who is the president of the Forex Association of Pakistan. Yeah. And what he said was that you have this about $2 billion. So bold statement, $2 billion of physical hard cash is getting smuggled every month from Pakistan to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Now, we are talking about getting a few $100 million in installments, and overall, you see, $2 billion amounts to $24 billion in a year, right?
Right.
So if we can reduce that, now all that is leading
No,
to
hang on.
Yeah.
Reducing that will stop further bleeding of the money, right?
Of course.
But it will not bring back the money or the forex that has gone on.
No, which is fine. You see, one
You're
is bleeding.
You're
You see,
looking at a situation when your forex reserves at this time stand, and I'm being generous, at $4.2 billion.
No, I agree with you. So you see, we're talking about bleeding, right? So if there's a bleeding of $2 billion every month, right? So yes, you're talking about the blood loss in this example, right?
Yeah.
So yes, a lot of loss has taken place. The quantity of blood or the reserves are very low at this point in time. Yes, but now all the efforts we are doing, Geneva conference and everything,
but my question,
that is to bring dollars
let
in.
me come back to my original question.
Yeah.
Who's going to hold the banks accountable for whatever they have done?
You see, State Bank is the regulator.
Yeah.
State Bank and Ministry of Finance, they are supposed to hold them accountable. They're following their due process. My concern is that the issue is, yes, so we are already at it, the issue is identified, and it's in the limelight, right? But that is to fix that bit. The bigger issue, that's what I'm saying. One is dollars are flowing out, then that is driving the sentiment. Because of the sentiment and the tight controls that the government has had to improve to bring down the current account deficit, and the previous speaker
You're
also
talking about
alluded
imports, curtailing the imports.
curtailing the imports, which is, you see, industry is suffering, everything is suffering because of that. But that is, we are forced to do that because of this problem. Now, how the problem accelerates is that people have switched to the Hawala market or the black market, right? So anybody who's sending money to Pakistan also, they'll get a better rate from the black market. So the money has dropped down. So if I'll give you a figure.
Who's running the Hawala and Hundi operations in Pakistan? They are Pakistanis, are they not?
Of course.
Who's going to hold them accountable? And yet, you were talking about one problem that has been flagged.
Yeah.
But that doesn't actually reprieve you of the responsibility to hold them accountable. Let me go back to Dr. Hakan Najib. Dr. Saab, we have heard that the government has actually constituted a high-powered, austerity committee, which is going to look into cutting corners and take positive actions to ensure that more money is not bled through. Do you think that such a committee can do some miracles at this time?
Quite difficult because monies are already short on a lot of things. PSDP is being cut. Then there are some expenditures like pension, which can be brought down in the long run in terms of their growth. Then the real austerity, I think, very obvious is the monies that we spend in the power sector, the kind of losses that we run there, the losses that we run in our SOEs. These are the actual expenditures which are going waste. The kind of organizational setups that we have in the country, the layers of government. So that is real austerity that one has, and that's a very long and cumbersome.
If you were to start by offloading SOEs, where would you start?
Energy sector.
Are you going to start with discos or somewhere else?
Energy sector. You're absolutely. The discos alone are holding the country hostage. I have no doubt in my mind. What do I mean by that? Their collection varies from 80 to 90%. So you've lost 10 to 20% before taking the bill from both of you and bringing it back to the disco. Their line losses stand 17, 18, 20%. So overall, you've lost 30% to 40% in terms of collection and line losses put together. They're overstaffed. Uh, they need a thorough revamp. The place to start, the day we want to make this disruptive effort is the energy sector, and discos would be the only place. Make them smaller, cut we can cut them into smaller sizes, give them to the private sector somewhere,
Right.
management,
But
control, and
Dr. Saab, there is a counter argument to this. And everybody we talk to, they cite one example, that is Karachi Electric, KE. Because of that, they say that as long as these bodies are going to be monopolies, they are going to underperform no matter what, whether they are in control of private sector or whether they are in control of the government sector. Do you agree with this argument?
So that's why I said, chop them into smaller units so the monopoly power, doesn't remain the kind that is there. And number two, on the KE, there are goods and bads that happened in that privatization. The line losses when KE went into privatization were in the high 30s. They are down to low 20s. So it is not only that there were no benefits to that, but then KE became an entity which had backward linkages. So there were other issues that stood there. But the idea is very clear. The operations must be done by an efficient private sector. The policy must be done by the government, and the state regulator sets the pricing. This is the model that we have to follow. The counter argument I always give is, think about it, that today there was only a company called PTC, not PTCL Limited, PTC, and that had a monopoly in Pakistan, and you had to get your mobile, your landline, your internet, and your, the dongle that we carry. Just think about it where you'd stand. Today, the prices are down. Today, the competition is there. You don't like one supplier, you go to the other one. The telecom market is the kind of right example to think about electricity also.
Right.
Just think about it. For the past, just last example, for the past many years, there is a project of putting meters in our house, which are efficient meters, and we have not been able to do that in this country. So, really, I mean, we have to disrupt this sector.
Right. Disruption is important. Sultan Ali Sahab, do you want to add to the matter of SOEs? How to actually go about it in this climate? How do you offload them?
You see, in my opinion, first of all, in terms of the current status of the economy, I think that's more of in executing that.
Yeah.
It's a medium to long-term thing. There's not an immediate thing because.
No, hang on.
Yeah.
You're talking about steel mills. There's nothing
No, I'm talking about
manufactured.
discos also.
No, but let me give you an example.
Okay.
You're talking about steel mills where you are subsidizing a staff for the sake of maintaining a property, which is hardly producing anything substantial.
Yeah.
So do you think that we should actually plan ahead for long term or medium term, not short term?
You see, no. Steel mill is naturally, it's a huge thing. It's a different issue. But I was talking more about discos. You see, difference is discos are operational. Steel mill right now, in its current state, it's not really, yes, it's taking cost out of the economy, but it's not providing a lot of service to the economy.
Right.
If you talk about discos, any disruption in the discos, certainly that area gets impacted. Everything is running on electricity.
Right. What kind of disruption do you anticipate?
In terms of, you see, we have a very good example. You mentioned that, and we talked about in terms of K Electric, right? Now, even if you break it down into smaller parts, I mean, that's my
No, but
opinion.
you said that there can be some breakdown, right?
Yeah, of course.
If you're trying to privatize discos.
Of course.
What kind of breakdown that might be?
You see, breakdown could be, one is in terms of services. Number two,
How? Why?
because they are making commercial decisions. So at times they may not feel that it's in their short-term interest to invest in the infrastructure.
Okay, I thought that you are going to talk about union actually trying to patronalize the companies which are privatized.
So that is another legal issue. But the other issues that I have also experienced is in terms of physical investment into the infrastructure, number one. Number two, when they are privatized, they will not have the appetite to, in case of again circular debt, right? If they are not getting the payment, if they are not able to receive, they have cash flows issues, right? So they are going to stop. Now, in terms when there is government control,
If
so
they
we
are
don't
going to
want to
stop,
disrupt.
sorry,
Yeah.
if they are going to stop,
Yeah.
is it going to add to circular debt or not?
Yeah, but it will also stop everything in their domain, right? So that
Right.
place goes dark.
Yeah,
And-
and
and
they
that-
will be
that-
in loss as well?
They will be in loss, but you see, beyond a point. So
No,
many
but-
of the energy companies,
Yeah.
they are reaching a point where they are unable to finance. You see, the cost of financing such losses is very high. You see, the interest rates are so high in Pakistan at the moment, right? So a private company at 17, 18%, it cannot be financing huge amounts of circular debt, right? You see, so that is where the issues, so it can get really, really messy. So it needs to be thought through and done very carefully, and that kind of planning and execution cannot be done in the short run, not in 2, 3 months, 6 months. The problem that we are facing right now, we need to fix and make some changes.
Yeah,
that
and
we
meanwhile
come to a solution to get
that-
out of the crisis we are in at the moment.
That means that we should get more bags of blood rather than actually stopping the flow of blood that is going out of your body, right? This is essentially what you are recommending in the short term. But let me go back to Dr. Hakan Najib. Dr. Saab, do
I'm
you
not,
agree
by the
with
way.
this?
I'm
I
not, by the
I will come back to you, sir,
Yeah,
and
okay.
you'll have every right to, take apart my question as
Yeah,
well.
okay.
Dr. Hakan Najib, your take on this, sir. These bottlenecks.
So, I'll mention something and you will understand how we don't want to do this. For the last 27 years, FESCO, the Faisalabad company, has been on the list of privatization. No one in Pakistan is serious to do it. Timing, I mean, you can take another 1 year to do it. It is immaterial. I think we have to make up our mind that we want to do it. We must realize 2,500 billion rupees circular debt is just what we have accumulated over the last few years. If you go back, there are many thousands of rupees that have been paid in billions to circular debt, which we don't even see today. And then the efficiency and then the standard of service, keep comparing this to a telecom operator. Keep comparing this to the cable that you get from a telecom operator. Keep comparing this to the mobile service that you get from a telecom operator. And you will understand what service is all about. There is undoubtedly a belief that somehow a benevolent government can do this. A benevolent government is the one which has piled up this circular debt. It is the one which is giving you a service. There are 5 airlines, Pitafi Saab, working in Pakistan. All of them are in profit. PIA made a 67 billion rupee loss operating on the same routes in Pakistan in FY22. Think about what we are doing.
Right, absolutely. Do you think that the Privatization Commission of Pakistan has the wherewithal to actually go ahead with something as drastic as this at this moment when the country is so polarized already?
So my very clear take on that is that we created a privatization commission as a separate body under an act to have a professional setup, a professional chair, a professional consultancy team, and we have not been able to deliver on that. And we must revamp the privatization commission, give them teeth, which they do have through the act, and have a professional chairman and give them a clear 5-year mandate when the new government at least comes in, that when they leave, the discourse should not be with us. If you
Right,
please,
absolutely. Ali Sultan Ali Saab, you want to respond to what I actually implied earlier? Or you want to add to
No,
the
no,
discussion?
I'll just give you an example, right? So the discourse and state-owned enterprise, that's a chronic problem, right?
Yeah.
So there's a difference between chronic issues and critical issues, right?
No, but that is a chronic issue that has also become acute.
No, no, of
right
course,
now.
of course, very true, very
You
true.
don't have money to pay them.
No, no, very true. But any solution, I mean, we just talked about it. It will take at least 1 year to prepare for that, right?
Why?
So while we're
How? Why?
the other speaker has just said that, so I'm not.
No,
in
but
my
can
opinion,
ask you,
of course,
right?
of course, of course. You see, I just mentioned to you, there's so many problems in who is going to do what, and unless you have a clear-cut plan, there are no buyers who are going to come in and bid for that.
Yeah, Dr. Hakan
You
Najib
cannot just
actually
offload,
gave
you
an
cannot-
example of a disco
Yeah.
where the plan has been languishing for quite some time and
Exactly.
nobody has been able
So
to
20 years he
implement.
mentioned, right? So,
Yeah.
so we can safely assume that it cannot be done in less than 12 months, right? So
Why?
now,
My question remains, why?
because no buyer is going to come in and go.
Why not?
Because again, so many losses are accumulated,
No,
right?
but have you advertised? Have you shown any intention? You
Uh,
haven't, right? These companies haven't.
But, okay, so there is an intention, clear intention by the government to offload in terms at policy level for some time.
But
No
usually
foreign
with a
investment,
tender
no
notice, with an advertisement, you call attention to the possibility of that thing being offloaded, right?
I'm personally not aware of any specific tenders at the moment, because there is a list of companies which is to be privatized. There's a list of companies which is already given to the Privatization Commission.
Yeah.
But even with the list of companies which are with the Privatization Commission for last so many years, we have not seen any fresh privatization in the last few years. We keep on interacting with foreign
Right,
governments, we keep
Sultan
on
Sahab,
talking with foreign
let
investors.
me tell you what is on my mind.
Yeah, yeah.
You're a strategy guy,
Yeah.
and I think in your answers also you're strategizing.
Yeah, yeah.
You are telling me 12 months because in 8 months or 9 months we head towards an election. Otherwise, whatever you want to do, you can do it within 3-4 months as well.
No, such transaction, I tell you, in general, even if it's not Pakistan, such large transaction, even to prepare a transaction for the bidding where the proper evaluation is done on the operations and everything.
Right.
So it takes investment banks about 6 months to really evaluate and then to make the rounds and bid. Now, I'll tell you what the problem is, that looking at the reserves that we, foreign exchange reserve that we have. So we need to do many, it's a large economy, right? So we need to do many things in parallel, right? So it's one issue, we need to fix it in parallel. The other issue which is impacting us critically is just like body having some high fever, right? So that is again the confidence in the economy which is driving the exchange rate. Confidence economy, one thing when I was quoting Malik Bostan, the other thing that he said was, in forex dealers' opinion, the true value of Pakistan rupee should be ranging in 180s. Fair value, right? So they feel, because they were also citing other economies, so they said it is due to these disruptions moving in that direction. Now, the moment, now what I feel is right now, most of the analysts and even some of the ex-ministers, right, belonging to the government's party, right, Miftah Ismail I'll just quote in person, they have been sitting minister or ex-finance ministers usually do not make negative comments.
Right.
Now you hear series of negative comments and doomsday statements coming about the country. Now globally,
If you are
it
a
doesn't
former,
happen.
if you
You
are a
should not be
former finance minister,
You
you should not be speaking at all, or you should
No,
be
you
lying
should,
about things.
No, you should be speaking. I'm not saying you should not be speaking, but if you look at previous finance ministers, right, even if they are not, if they are in opposition, right, you do not hear doomsday statement, right? So it's just like
You
a run on
haven't
the bank.
listened to Tareen Saab then.
No, I have, no.
He is constantly criticizing everything.
No, criticism is something else. You see,
Yeah, allow me to actually.
No,
very
I'll
quick-
just make
yeah.
one fine comment. There's one distinction. One distinction is you are pointing out some of the issues.
Yeah.
The other is you are also making a judgment, right? No matter what happens, it's not going to work. So you see, when you see international markets are having an impact here. For international markets, a ex-finance minister, or even when he was sitting finance minister, he got the highest inward remittances of $3.1 billion in April. That was their first month of operations.
Right.
Coming into
You're exactly going to do just that by talking, criticizing another minister. I don't want to. I don't have that kind of time.
Sure,
Otherwise, we could have gone on. Hakan Najib Saab, 2 minutes for conclusion. You have the floor, sir. Go ahead, conclude for us.
So I think we should, in the short run, make sure we get the IMF on board. In the short run, there are some transactions which can be quickly done, which is the LNG power plants, for example. We should at the same time start preparing for longer term privatizations to get more FDI in the country, which is a non-debt creating instruments and needed to move ahead. At the same time, we should start thinking of reprofiling our debt. I don't mean restructuring the debt. I just mean reprofiling. We should make sure that the next couple of years, at least the next year, is fully met. At the same time, we should run a good income support program, as all the political parties have tended to support it. I've always been a proponent that we should do that, and we should also start looking at what can be substituted in the agriculture imports that we do. I think this is a good set for the next 6 to 8 months, and then we'll see when the new government comes in.
Right. Very quickly, Dr. Saab, because you brought up debt also, debt management. Why is it that the government has not been able to appoint a full-time debt officer?
But Officer, honestly, the reason is that in the government to appoint a high caliber individual, I've been in the finance ministry in a very similar position on the reform side. It's a very, very difficult task. Individuals like us find it hard to come on the kind of salaries that are offered. Then put together, being in a secure job, coming to a 2 to 3 year tenure, there are all kinds of issues. And so the government then tries to, go on with whatever is available in the basket of.
And that would be a temporary appointment from 20th grade officers, right? That is what is happening right now. But regardless, Dr. Saab, I'm told that we have to conclude the program here. Dr. Hakan Najib, thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Always great having you in the show. Sultan Ali Haider Saab, thank you very much, sir, for your precious time also. And if you thought that I was deliberately trying to give you tough time, I wasn't.
I thought it was a job. So.
I just wanted to understand what you were actually saying. Viewers, you have listened to our participants. There are many moving parts when you talk about Pakistan's economy. But here's the thing. People keep on saying, keep on talking about the political cost of, complying with the IMF. But there's a counter argument also. If you comply with the IMF in the short term, there's a possibility that the inflation might go up. But there's another possibility where you don't comply with it and inflation goes even higher, and because you're sinking, you don't have any antidote to correct the path. So at this moment, the government of Pakistan has decided to once again approach IMF and comply with the demand. If that happens, hopefully in coming days, we will see somebody that is there in the economy. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.